Computer. Well, for the record, this is the August 2nd FLFDN Regional Hybrid Multi-Site Meeting. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Do we want to do really rapid introductions or just get right into sharing what we've all been talking about?
Introductions are probably useful because we don't know the other half.
Screen has frozen. How about that? I don't know if y'all can hear us. For us, the screen has frozen.
Anybody know what we do to unfreeze it since we've got all our tech people here?
There we go.
No, this is Georgette laughing, not.
Hi, Georgette.
Hi.
We could mute our video if we feel like that's hogging some of our bandwidth.
No, they're going out.
Oh,
Can anybody hear us?
the Geneseo site has left.
Oh, maybe the whole.
Maybe they froze too.
Hi.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Put it in gallery mode, maybe. Or do we want to?
Are you running this?
Orlay's machine is running it. Oh.
What are you trying to do? Actually, maybe it is good in speaker view. No, this is good. I like this.
Are we back?
We're back.
Two.
Is it freezing?
Can you hear us?
Oh, are we muted? No, we're not.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Good.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so
Okay.
we heard everything we shared, right?
Geneseo site, why don't you rapidly do just names and who's in the room?
Okay, go ahead.
Lisa Brown, UC Rochester.
Lori Fox, CEO.
Lear, RIT.
Bob Baker. I'm not sure if I'm on the camera, but I am from Brockport.
Here.
Becky Pat, Geneseo.
Great, we'll rapidly do Cornell site.
Mark Fink, Ithaca College.
Becky Lane, Ithaca College.
Jeremiah Perryhill, RIT.
Marilyn Dispenza, Ithaca College.
Kathy Dimmodak, Cornell. If you wanna.
And our remote people.
Hello, everyone. This is Michael Starenko at RIT.
That's fine. And
Hi,
Georgette?
this is Georgette. I'm also at Cornell, but I'm at Cornell.
Great.
Oh,
Glad you're all here. So for those of you observing remotely, we're going to do a debrief of some topics. So we had kind of a three-phase process. Select a topic that emerged from a list of 8 or 10 topics on the FLFDN survey. These were issues that were top of mind for survey respondents. Dig into that topic, phrase it as a problem statement, have some group discussion inside the space of 1 hour, and then make a refined problem statement and maybe a plan of work. I'll be honest, at our site, we got to the refined problem statement stage, but we feel good about it and we had a far-ranging discussion. So Marty, I think you did a lot of carrying the water on putting together the format of this. What's the best way that you would suggest to move forward? Should we each just kind of show our cards and share what we've done?
Yeah, because we really didn't follow. That was too much on this side. So we spent a lot of kind of.
We're losing your audio.
Now,
Is that better?
Is that better if we have the laptop closer?
Way, way better.
Okay, good. We did a good job in the beginning, but then we got totally excited about our conversation and distracted coming with a list of ideas and
got about every other word, but it sounds like you had a far-ranging organic discussion in the room.
We did. We did.
Did kind of a problem statement, or what was the topic that you dug into most deeply?
Well, it was communication and outreach. And what we really looked at was just kind of the challenges in really people know do here, and how, you know, services we provide, and just being able to engage faculty in ways that are relevant to them. Network responding.
I'm going to make a suggestion that everybody kills their video, because we are getting choppiness, and I don't know if it's internet connectivity, but if we all just mute our video, we might get better audio.
All right. I also stopped sharing it. If we're not going to be able to see each other, maybe just the audio from my laptop will be good.
Can you all still hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we've muted our video as well.
And we focused on the optional things that faculty could engage us for. The course design, the presentations, the informal activities that we try to do with faculty. So some of the problems that we identified are actually in some places physically where we're located is not in the center of things, you know, so people don't find us organically. Marty, they keep locked in a room where you have to have a special key. And time. I mean, faculty are very busy. And while many of them desire the opportunity to participate in these optional things, they just physically don't have the time.
So I have a question. As a solution, you're saying physical space, being maybe on a big campus where you're far away from people and there's a lack of time. Is there any solutions to bridging that gap and sort of making things in smaller bites or
yes
things?
We did talk about some things. One thing that we talked about is getting away from the historical. We're located in the center, come to us if you need things. Trying to spend time more out with faculty where they live, you know, their office buildings. Lisa at U of R, they just are working on a relocation project to put their departments on a frequent travel path. So for example, where faculty park, they really need to walk by Lisa's offices to get to their own offices. So that was one thing that we talked about. I think another piece, Marty, you want to talk about the Magna Mentor Commons idea?
Just the idea of shorter, more manageable events that don't require a lot of planning on the part of the center. So in our group at RIT, we have not done, we don't do a lot of events. We had kind of gotten into that trap at different times over the past few years where you spend a lot of time planning and publicizing events for not a lot of people showing up. So two of the things we've been doing are, one is Teachers on Teaching, where we find faculty on campus who are doing something interesting in their classroom or online and bringing them in, and they kind of set it up and we just give them the space. And we've had good response from other faculty for that. And we use that to kind of also publicize our location and our services and how we can help faculty on whatever the presentation was on, plus related things. And Magna Mentor, which are, the video service we have a subscription to, where we'll just host a viewing party. It's just, low stakes for us, easy enough to set up where, we invite people down, they'll watch the 20-minute video, and we'll just facilitate a discussion around it.
Do you find that the videos are good quality and people come to them?
Usually, I mean, we're only looking for, 15 to 20 faculty to show up at these events. We'll review the ones, and select the ones that seem relevant to what's going on campus, and again, have really, some good ideas to impart.
You said that was Magna Menta?
So Magna has two products. There's a live webinar product, and that's what I was telling the room in Cornell about earlier. There's also this self-serve 20-minute video product called Magna Mentor Commons. And as Marty said, we kind of have to vet those you've got to watch them to make sure the content's good. Usually it is, it ranges from things like developing as a department chair to handling difficult situations in the classroom to supporting students who are veterans. So it's got a pretty healthy, robust catalog of about 250 videos that are growing all the time. It's downstream of the live webinars they run. So Magna's business model is, let's try to sell a live webinar, and then that's eminently reusable content that eventually lands in Magna Mentor Commons as a 20-minute self-serve.
And you pay for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we license both those products.
So I wonder if, like, we have LinkedIn Learning, what used to be lynda.com. I wonder if you could do the same sort of thing with your LinkedIn Learning subscription.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We have that.
LinkedIn Learning is really, has a lot of little videos, and they're very short. And they're not so faculty teaching development. There are some videos on that, but that's not their bread and butter.
Right.
So I think if you found the right content, but I personally think LinkedIn Learning, if you could put together short playlists, because some of their courses are like hours long, but if you could put together some short playlists and send that to people ahead of time, maybe that's something that you could, get a Zoom call to discuss, or, kind of do that as a little continuing education type of thing where you can actually track people's usage of it and, maybe have a group to talk about it later.
Right. Does anyone use a Zoom meeting for your faculty development to try to reach faculty who might not be on campus?
We've tried it, and we don't have a really great system for advertising our stuff. Like, we don't have a calendar, so part of it is that's a problem. But this year for our semester startup, I'm trying something new, that when you have a workshop, like getting started with a learning management system, where I'm having I just speckled the calendar and I'm going to just blast it out with, we're calling it our office hours, so people can just get on and stay for 10 minutes and ask questions about anything. And we have one called like Getting Started with the Learning Management System, where we do a very short demo, so not like a big involved demonstration, but basically then people could get on and actually try it from their desktop, and we can put them on tool choices and things like that.
I have a quick response too. You're reminding me, when I was at Pod, about half the people there talking about email lists and calendaring said we just use MailChimp for email lists and we just use Eventbrite for our calendaring. It's, for them, it was like a beg forgiveness versus ask permission, going off-brand for the calendaring and email.
Gotcha.
I think we're going to see more of that, because we can't function 100% if we're restrained by some of the bureaucracies.
Yeah. That was a good share. Would you like us to share from the Cornell room?
Please.
Okay, so our problem statement, similarly, we looked at two things bubbled up when we did a multi-vote on topics: evolving role of Centers for Teaching and Learning and communications and outreach. And we kind of saw those as enmeshed. So the problem statement was, how do we define the role of a CTL and how do we communicate that out to the university? So we talked a lot about what the evolving role means and how our served population doesn't necessarily understand what it is we do. We talked about the balance between, quote unquote, pushing our services out and waiting for them to come to us.
Yeah.
We talked a bit about the triage model too, and working with the faculty who need it most, or trying to reach that population in the middle, to kind of move them up. We talked about sending targeted email invitations to events. So for example, if you're doing a session on things that affect lab instructors, and you can find the list of lab instructors, invite those people to your brown bag. We talked about formal methods for needs analysis among the faculty population. And Kathy shared that she does mid-semester surveys to students, that there's a culture in this CTO that serves the engineering school to just send mid-semester surveys to students. Certain departments have bought into that. And then run that confidential survey interpretation with the faculty. So here's what your students love, here's what could be better, here's where your course is going to get greater. So there's that formative mindset. We also talked about teaching circles. So this kind of bubbled up from the needs analysis question. So one thing we do at RIT, and my colleague Michael is on the call too, so kudos to Michael for running this. There's a 2-phase invitation to propose semester-long conversation tables with faculty, and then to advertise the existence of those tables out to all faculty, which is kind of nice because it's organic topics that are at top of mind and top of heart for the faculty that want to dig into them throughout the semester. So as a CTL, all we provide is some scheduling function to get those people in the room around the table. And at the end of every semester, there's a plenary where all the conversation tables share back to all of one another, and we provide some hospitality for that 2.5 hour, 2 hour long luncheon. We talked about the metaphor for our services. Coaching bubbled up as kind of a metaphor, and under barriers, faculty feeling like engaging with our centers means that they're remedial or they're in detention. Right? So kind of reframing what we do as formative work, reframing what we do as continuing education. So that led to some possibilities around continuing education credit, either for engaging with us directly or for telling us what are you engaging with out in the world. If you're listening to podcasts, if you're doing any kind of identity formation and development in your teacherly self, can you write a reflection about the things you're reading and the things you're seeing, and maybe that could count for your continuing education credit with our center. We talked a little bit about the FLFDN brand. So this kind of melded together a mini rebranding of our CTLs and a mini rebranding of FLFDN. One person shared that in Nevada, there was a presence and identity on campus called the Consortium of Faculty Professional Opportunities, which is really positive, formative language, but it also is a nice way to roll up the existing campus stakeholders like IT, the library, research services, and ad hoc areas depending on the topic, so accessibility services, digital media, etc. So again, that was Consortium of Faculty Professional Opportunities, kind of a sub-brand or a meta-brand for existing campus partners. Around the topic of the FLFDN name brainstorm, we were thinking about things like continual improvement, effective, satisfaction, inspiration, optimal. One person has suggested that optimizing faculty teacherly identity is really the thing, if it's not remedial. So again, we kind of left with the question, can we create a culture of continuing education or in-service development for faculty? And our refined problem statement was, our work is in coaching and continuing education of faculty in their professional role as teachers. How do we communicate that out to the university? So we're still left with that lingering question, but I feel like we refined kind of the core of what our problem statement is.
Mm-hmm. Nice. It sounds like a great conversation. I'm impressed that you covered 3 issues.
We didn't solve 3 issues, but
talked about them a lot. So where do we go from here?
Well, I have a question. I really liked the last part of what you were saying in terms of marketing or communicating what we do as formative work. And then some of those titles that you threw out I thought were really effective. But a question I have is, I think a lot of faculty on a lot of campuses respond to that language, such as what we provide is formative and helps them develop and grow. But there's a significant portion of faculty who feel like they don't need to be formed or grow
Right.
Or develop.
right? That they have been hired because they already have and know everything they need to know, even if they were hired 30 years ago. And that's just kind of the reality of the world that we live in. There's a segment of folks like that. So my question is, I'm wondering, what kind of language, because that language you were using seems so sort of well thought out and intended to communicate a particular thing to certain people. I wonder if there's other language that we could find that could communicate what we do to folks who feel like they don't need to develop or be formed. Is there language to kind of get around,
That's why I like the
cohesiveness? I'm just throwing this out.
Well, that's why I really like the word optimize, because it really says a lot, and it speaks to somebody who might think that they have all the answers, but everybody wants to be more efficient. Everybody wants to do a better job with less effort, which optimizes kind of, to me, says that. So, I mean, if there are words similar to that are but more inspiring, maybe?
We want to take out the sort of development idea. We all agreed that those of us that teachers didn't like development, that we need to get that out and get this optimized, efficiency, effective, some of those.
Continuous improvement.
Continuous improvement. In some sense, some of those are more industry ones. We didn't come up with a.
Yeah.
For me too, that reaction is possibly grounded in fear, right? I mean, there's like a subject-object, there's a grammar thing happening. I don't want to be the object of this sentence. So I wonder if there are ways to communicate. Look, faculty, you are in control of your future. We're here to facilitate you taking control. You're absolutely the subject of the sentence. And we recognize that you want to improve and grow and even be recognized for your existing expertise as a teacher. Again, you said it perfectly, Becky. We're here to help you optimize your teacherly role.
Another great thing about that word optimize is that it cuts to a huge concern, which is time and efficiency, right? So optimize suggests you're getting a lot of mileage out of a little resources, and faculty often don't feel like they have time, right? Our group talked about how what we offer is often optional and they are forced to do what is obligatory. But if we present ourselves as optimizing things, it creates a sense that it might be worthwhile giving us a little bit of time for people who are feeling really pressed for time.
And one of the things that I've said a long time is, like, we're in teaching learning with technology, and I like to post technology. It's not always, there's not a pedagogical goal sometimes, but if it saves you time and it helps level the playing field with different students, and it just saves some logistical emails going back and forth. You want a student to email you with a really interesting question about the content. You don't want them to email you to say, hey, where's that reading that you want us to read? So I don't think it's bad to say, yeah, that sort of efficiency and effectiveness, even though I don't want to make it sound like a business, but does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think we want to be careful. Optimize doesn't sound like it's management trying to optimize us.
Yeah,
but what about if there's something about optimizing teaching effectiveness? That sort of gets almost that student feel into it too. We're not optimizing you as a person, we're optimizing the effectiveness of your teaching.
I like that appeal to efficiency too. We're optimizing how you're allocating your time.
Yeah, and we're not optimizing you.
Mm-hmm.
We're helping you optimize.
Yeah, exactly. They feel much better if they feel like they've got control on it.
Mm-hmm.
They're optimizing teaching effectiveness and efficiency. And I don't know if that's redundant, if optimizing and efficiency are the same piece. But
this still leads to the challenge of positioning our centers so that when a faculty member does recognize the opportunity to an opportunity where they can increase their effectiveness of being the organization on campus that they contact, you know, kind of how to stay top of mind for faculty.
I'm not answering that directly, but we had also talked about, should we rebrand our group, the Finger Lakes group? We could put a tagline on it, the Finger Lakes Faculty Development Network, optimizing teaching effectiveness and efficiency. I don't know if we want to quite take away our brand that we sort of know ourselves as, but we could put sort of a tagline to it that describes more what we're doing.
Sure.
That might be a way to sort of split the difference on that piece that we were trying to get to.
Great.
Helps explain it. I think for our centers, I think I like your point, because it is, if we're not the place that they see, they're going to go on the internet and look for resources and help, which may actually be a lot of ineffective time on their part to not find the resource they want, when if our awareness is high enough, then they know, they may not know the name, they may not know the acronym, because we are in the academy, we have to have acronyms, but they may know, you know, Sally or Barb or Lori, and say, I'm going to contact them first off, and then and maybe we do send them to a site off. But that is how do you get that to be top of the hat? I think that's interesting. UNR is doing that. You have to walk past the offices. That's great, but that's not always geographically possible.
I think for me, I'm interested in growing a network of good partners who can make good referrals. And I'm looking to my librarians, I'm looking to department secretaries, so that I picture like a business card in their hand, that they got a stack of cards for my center, so that when somebody says I'm having a teaching problem, they can say, this is where you go for that, right? Because I know faculty just go to the person in the office next door and say, how do I solve this?
Right. I just had a brainstorm of a marketing idea. Our faculty have to take their own whiteboard markers into the classroom. So I want to get a bunch of whiteboard markers that have brand information on it. So they have it in their bag. And I'm not sure what it says. I haven't gone that far. I mean, I started kind of with the help desk number, but that doesn't work for faculty. They don't want to call the help desk. Yeah. But even with your teaching and learning center on it, or your, we have a Canvas hotline, or, I mean, we really could market it with whatever we want, but it's in their bag when they go teach in a classroom.
And they're picking it up every time they teach.
Every time they teach, they're looking at that marker.
That's kind of a cool idea.
I'm going to go look into that today. I'm not sure what we would put on it, but I mean, it could even be, that's kind of a cool start of the semester gift from a teaching and learning center.
Yeah. Ooh,
because you don't provide markers in your
We
classrooms.
don't provide markers
so
in the
they're either
classrooms.
buying them in their departments or buying them themselves and bringing them.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea, yeah.
And
somebody said something about like having business cards for your center to give to other faculty, but I was thinking our department admins, having a business card about your services for the department admins, because that's sometimes who the faculty go to say, do you know how I can get help with this?
Right.
And they're like, no, I have no idea. Well, if there was a business card with your center stuff, like say, call these people.
or a for your department secretaries.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I did, I just was I saw an somewhere on our Center of Faculty Excellence website, and we're in teaching, learning, and technology. So we have the added issue of we're under IT versus under like a provost side. So we're trying to, build our brand to be, we're going to have a little bit of more of an emphasis on technology, but we also have the pedagogical chops to, help improve your teaching. So there was a first year seminar institute happening this fall that I saw an announcement for. So I wrote the director of that program and I said, if you're doing this institute, can I assist in helping the faculty with instructional design and selecting and using appropriate technologies? and some other stuff. And, you know, he wrote back and said, we're still planning it, but thanks for the offer. I'll get back to you. You know what I mean? So, like, again, this whole thing that if I just made an announcement, hey, come to me, they're not going to come. But if I can kind of infuse inside other structures, I'm hoping that kind of creates some new avenues.
Is anybody's teaching center embedded in a classroom area? And our classrooms are sort of distributed. But some schools have classroom buildings. Is anybody embedded there?
Not yet.
We have ownership, quote unquote, of a classroom it's a active learning space that's opening this fall. So it's kind of it's a classroom, but it's quasi, how are these practices happening? What can we do to improve upon those? The faculty who want to use that room have to have some technical training where we wrap in the technicals, the hook for the room, and then the pedagogy is the actual substance that's really going to benefit them in that room. And they're open to both. And we have another classroom of 16 that's an experimental center. So anything that's really new and cutting edge we put in there. And then we have labs, but we don't have we have classrooms. Both of those two rooms are being used this fall in different ways. And we have a data visualization lab that's actually like a classroom that's being used to hold classes this fall. So we'll know more after this fall because we're surveying the students and the faculty in those rooms to get some data on how they're using it and what constraints they have. How would they like to use it that they can't see? So hopefully did I question? Sort of. No.
You didn't answer the question, but you gave some very useful information.
Oh, sorry.
Which actually started me thinking the next time we do one of these, it'd be interesting to put on there just sharing a little bit about how some of our best classrooms are designed that support the newer pedagogies. Just useful to see what other people have created.
For us at RIT, I'm trying to get us to a place where we recognize faculty kind of have to accept the room they're given, and we're trying to create some materials to help them adapt their learning activities to whatever space they happen to be in.
We've gone the other way in engineering. We've converted about 8 rooms to be more active learning, and we actually offer to pre-book people in those rooms before the university schedules them. But the important step was we actually do it before the course roster is posted for students to register, because too many people want them, and they can't all teach at 10:10 on Tuesday, Thursday.
Right.
So the deal is you have to get your request into me like 2 weeks in advance of when the roster is going to go live for students to schedule or pre-register. And then I get back to you and say, well, you can't have 10:10, but if you're willing to take 9, you can have this cool room. And people have been amazingly receptive of moving the times of their classes if it's before the students register. And that means some of our best rooms are just almost entirely booked because we've pushed into these odd times, or less popular times. So it's booked in the evening, it's booked early, it's booked Friday afternoon.
Can you describe one of your best rooms?
It's 84 seats, it's got hexagonal tables so the students are inward facing. We do have dual screens, independent inputs, so you can put up a problem statement and work on it out a solution. We've got document camera so that you can write and they can see it. And then there are 14 of these tables, and every 2 tables is paired to a side projector on the wall with a whiteboard. There's a lot of design classes in here. So instead of, okay, now it's halfway point, everybody's going to present their design and we're going to take 2 periods and it's going to get really boring.
Can we see it?
Yeah, we can see it afterwards. Instead, you can say, okay, all the groups labeled A present to the groups labeled B, and then turn around and do that. So in 15, 20 minutes, all the groups have had a chance to present and get feedback from at least one other group. And so some people use it for that. Some people use low tech, just the fact that they're all inward facing. But that's our most popular room.
That 110 I mentioned coming on 4 in the fall. There's 4, it's a smaller room, 4 tables, and they each have a monitor that they can go to, and we're putting in immersive media in the room. So the setup is, we don't have to cart down a whole bunch of goggles and equipment. It'll already be ready.
Probably our second most popular room is one similar table arrangement, whiteboards around all the walls, but not all the projectors, for people who just don't care about the technology piece, but they want that interaction. But the trick was getting in ahead of the students registering for courses. And that was something we didn't used to do. But once we changed that perception, it's made a big difference in getting people where they need to. And then if they know they can get there, they're more willing to change their teaching because they know they can land in a place that'll work. We even had one who went as far as saying, well, if you put me in here, I will have to change. I'm going to do it, and that will force me to change. And he turned it into a really great class.
Take note.
I want to make space for the people who are joining us individually. Michael, Georgette, Jenna Linskins has also joined online as well. What if all this resonates for you, and are there any barriers or other problems that you wanted to explore?
This is Georgette. Actually, right now, working at Cornell is more like corporate training, so we don't have these same kind of issues. But it's all this is harkening back, reminding me of when I was actually teaching, and just some of the issues I had with the classroom, and then not really knowing what instructional design was and all that kind of stuff. So it's been very interesting to hear what you guys are doing on your campuses. So I'm going to mute myself now. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenna or Michael?
Hi, this is Jenna. I'm actually with Ithaca College, so the rest of my colleagues have all been there, Becky and Marilyn and Mark, and I think the only one thing that really, when you were talking about the classrooms, and one thing that when I've done all of my training with looking at redesign and learning spaces, is that when we start looking at that, we need to include all constituents and get their input from the beginning, instead of and I think this is something that I've seen from K-12 through higher ed over the years, from Wisconsin to New York to North Carolina and beyond, is that we tend to build it and think they will come, rather than building what they really want. So that's why, like, as Mark was sharing, we're going to be doing a lot of research this fall with the faculty that are going to be using those spaces, and I'm excited to hear what their thoughts are, and get their ideas, so that as a campus, as we go forward and look at the spaces, how can we build rooms that, and with them, and how can we organize that in order to most effectively support the teaching and learning environment. And that includes students, including engaging students in that conversation as well. So, and I think that a part of that, when you start earlier and you engage them earlier, when it comes to the development or the training or the pedagogical support that as instructional designers and as leaders that we put in, I think we're going to get a better return, because they have that buy-in from the beginning, and they want to learn how to use that space effectively, and they want to learn how to use the tools that are being added, whether it's the smart boards, or touch screens, or workstations, whatever it might be. I think when we engage the faculty and the students earlier, it really makes a difference in the return that we see in the end. So that was just the thoughts that were going through my head, and then I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and let Michael and the others keep talking.
Before we jump, I have a question for you. I've been engaging faculty, but you said you engaged with the students. I'd be curious to hear what kind of comments you're getting from the students.
Well, we haven't in the conversations now, we haven't had a lot of conversations with what do the students want in the spaces. That's something that we did when I was in Wisconsin, where we asked the students what do they need in their spaces, in the in the shared spaces or in classrooms. What would they like to see? I was part of a library redesign, and we asked them, this is your library. What do you need in your library? So asking them about like, and some of them would say, we still want quiet workstations. We want group areas to work. We want comfortable furniture. And then they also talk about, they want the library. We actually redid an entire high school library where it was more like going to Barnes and Noble, and everything was categorized in different categories rather than following the decimal system. So that was a big shift that we did, and it was by request of the students. And we heard this recently when in a meeting we had with a vendor, the idea of zones of learning. And students want zones of learning because they learn in different styles. And this goes back to my teaching days when I taught in the K-12 system. When you think of your first kindergarten class, when you were a kindergartner, you had zones of learning. You had different areas around the room where you were doing things. And when they move into first grade, we take those zones away and we put them in desks. And those desks are in rows. And that's not how people learn. Think of your own learning and how you learn. Do you learn or work better in a standing up, leaning over a table, working with a group, working quietly and by yourself? So asking students those questions, and that's a big part of engaging and getting their voice in when you're looking at classroom redesign.
So I think that's great, all that stuff on how do you actually design some good classrooms. But my question in the faculty development or the continuous improvement is, once you have the rooms that offer some new possibilities, how do you, you're going to have the super motivated ones, but how do you, I'm a new professor coming to Cornell Engineering School and there's this new room, how do you develop them? I'm curious what people have to say on that.
At Cornell Engineering, we have a 2-day workshop for brand new faculty on teaching. So I try and teach them a bunch of this active learning, and then towards the end of it I say, and we have some rooms that support that. Let me know what you need and we'll try and get you in.
So at RIT, I think the design ethic for us is radically flexible, radically adaptable. And so some of the things, I mean, this opens up rich conversations about whose job is it to do room reset, whose job, you can take ownership of the space, but when it's a shared resource among different schools, sometimes you see things like inertia rules, right? You can design for flexibility, but whatever's there. My favorite thing in the world is when there's really flexible chairs that are arranged into a grid of the familiar desk grid, right? The familiar lecture scenario. So I don't know if that gets at your question of how do you approach room redesign.
Not approaching room redesign, but actually the room is designed with the chairs on the rollers and the whiteboards and maybe some technology. How do you, and maybe the faculty members are used to teaching how they've been taught in little rows from their first grade class on. How do you bring people little by little into radically maybe changing how they're teaching?
The first move for me is to stop calling it lecture and call it a whole class meeting. I think that reframing really opens the door to saying, okay, what are we doing with our valuable face-to-face time together? I had a surprising reaction when we started. So we've got a new build, new building, blank canvas. What a great opportunity. And we said, hey, faculty, guess what? We're going to make it all active learning spaces. Isn't it great? And half of them, almost the entire engineering school, said, do not take our lecture away from us. Our work is house painting. We've got to cover content. The best way to do it is one-to-many. please do not threaten us with active learning. So like, that's a huge mindset. Right?
Yeah.
That's a huge resistance and opportunity for change talk. I don't know if that addresses your question, but that's the environment.
What do you do about that? Do you say, okay, we won't take your lecture halls, keep lecturing?
Yeah, I mean, here's your whole class meeting scenario. The control is in your hands, and it becomes a multi-year change talk scenario where you start talking about, well, what is the benefit you can get from moving away from lecture and moving toward that?
One thing we did, because we have some of that same issue, is we haven't done it with a big lecture hall because I haven't had one of those come up yet. But some of the smaller spaces, 50 to 60, we've put it's such that you can either lecture or active learn, but it's not like the architect said, well, see, this is flexible because you can take out all the tables and you can rearrange them, but not between every class, not in the middle of a class. So we've done things like, even though the tables, we've got rows of tables, the chairs are on swivels, so it's easy to turn to a group. And I try and sell it as, you can use any mix. You can pure lecture, you can pure active learn, but you can also interleave. And I can get some of the faculty to, okay, well, you can mostly lecture, but do some activities because you can change focus so quickly. So we've tried to keep that idea of being able to change focus, in whether you want a small group or a big group or a lecture, and trying to get the room to support all of those, which is, and unlike the architect, I don't mean physically rearranging lots of stuff that's going to take 2 man days. It has to be a quick flip that the students just shift focus. That's how I'm dealing with those professors, so that I can make the change and still accommodate them and move them across a gradient over time.
That's a great way to put it.
Michael, we've not heard from you. Any reactions, reflections, or did any of this resonate?
Yeah, there's a great deal that resonates with me, but I wanted to just let everyone know that I've been working on an article about teaching circles, and I've been so caught up in that it's really refreshing to hear all this conversation and hear all these ideas, and it brings me, as it were, back into the field of educational development. That's what I tend to call our field, and I was intrigued by the discussion of different words that might motivate faculty. But a couple things apart from teaching circles that I've been thinking about recently. One is mid-semester student feedback surveys. And that's being driven here at RIT and throughout higher education by criticism, I think rightly so, of student evaluations. So colleges and universities everywhere are scrambling to honor their commitment to alternative forms of formative and summative teaching evaluation. So, I think, is it Kathy from Cornell?
Yes.
In the engineering school?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I think it was about 3 years ago. You talked about the mid-semester survey program in the School of Engineering.
Yeah, I think I did it when you
yeah. So I'm just curious. Have other administrators from other units at Cornell come to you and said, we want to learn from your model? How do we do it?
So we're now up to, I think, 8 departments that do it. I did 294 these last semester. Yeah. I've talked about it with some of the other colleges, but they don't have somebody like me to implement it. So they're trying to wrestle with, do they put somebody in the college? Do they use the center? The university center has started offering some mid-semester surveys to new faculty. The difference is I hit every course in the department, so I inherently people who don't volunteer.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, I would encourage you to propose an article about that to Inside Higher Ed or EDUCAUSE, something like that. I
That's
think
interesting.
it's really valuable.
Valuable. That's a huge takeaway for me today too. So appreciate
Yeah, you're doing something special.
So,
Thank you, Michael.
you're welcome. Thanks, everyone. It's been great.
Well, in our 6 minutes remaining, Marty had suggested we might unpack a little bit and just kind of at a meta level debrief on how this session went. Was this a good model? And what's next for Clifton? What would you like to see in the coming year? I'll tap the Geneseo site.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it's absolutely enjoyable to get together in person. I think we could have talked even more.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Zoom meetings, while they are, super convenient to connect people from other places, I just personally find that it's the getting together in person and developing relationships with each other that's the most valuable. Although I do recognize even in my own life, it's hard to make time. And I'm very grateful to host at Geneseo. So my commute was about 30 seconds. I really am appreciative of Marty making the agenda today. That was fantastic. And so for me, it really was one of the best FLFDN meetings I've been to because we had a guide map of how to move our discussion.
Even if we didn't follow it exactly.
Right.
Yes.
I used it to take notes. I mean, it's fine. I don't know. Any other thoughts from people here?
Yeah, I would second your comment about getting together in person. I mean, I know we're strewn all over a large state, but maybe a mix of sort of the Zoom meetings and then, I don't know, even if there were face-to-face things twice a semester. And I don't think it has to be just one location. I think this notion of 2 separate locations was good. It's a great idea.
It also kept the discussion size comfortable, the fact that there were smaller sessions. I think some of the early meetings we had, because people drove, where they tended to be more half day, and I think our discussion, it felt like we were getting into it and it was time to close, that maybe we should have had 2 hours on site before the Zoom meeting. It would take more time, but I think we would have, it felt like we were starting to get somewhere and then time was up.
I feel that too.
So maybe what we're talking about is possibly doing the Zoom meetings like we had been doing and just a Zoom meeting, or just face-to-face meetings, maybe in 2 separate locations that don't then necessarily have to be followed by a Zoom meeting. I don't know. I mean, I came down here to Geneseo from Rochester. I live in Rochester, and the drive wasn't much further than
what you do
driving out to
Yeah.
Rockport. So there is kind of a western and an eastern segment of our area. And now I'll go back and I'll have the afternoon to work. So it's not like I had to devote an entire day to
get
this.
here.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, being on a Zoom meeting, even though I find it really rich, and when you have it in gallery view, you see everybody, but still, after an hour, you're still sitting at a screen. So, and I feel like more organic conversations could happen in person. So I really think even if we only allocated 2 hours, maybe 90 minutes together and a half an hour of just a debrief would be good. And I mean, I'm really happy. I mean, Ithaca College and Cornell are 4 miles apart, and and there's a lot of resources here at Cornell. I never met Kathy before, even though I used to work at Cornell. So it was really valuable. And if we think about TC3 and other schools that are maybe not a 2.5 or 3 hour drive away, but maybe Syracuse or something like that Eastern group, maybe meet Wells College. I don't know if they're in our group, but
they have been previously.
Right. So maybe we.
Elmira and Corny. community colleges.
And whenever you're online at a Zoom meeting, it is so tempting to keep doing email on the side and stuff like that. And I think you do pay more attention.
You do when you're in person. Yeah. Because we all put our devices, I mean, some of us took notes on them, but for the most part, we put our devices away.
Marty,
Yeah.
I had a follow-up question for Marty. Are you suggesting we do the regionals and not do a recap using Zoom at the end, or?
I don't think that was Marty.
Oh,
Or was it?
no. Marty.
My thought was we like the face-to-face, and we'd like it maybe to be a little longer than 1 hour, especially if we're driving.
Right.
But trying to do a face-to-face every month is a lot. So why not do face-to-face maybe twice a semester, and then do a Zoom twice a semester?
Maybe part of those Zooms is recap, doing that sharing like we're doing now.
Right.
Like use the Zoom
At
where
the
everybody's
subsequent
at their
Zoom.
Zoom instead of trying to get the groups together, because it makes it more difficult to do. Like you may not hear Becky at the end of the table if she were trying to speak as much as you can hear Lori, who's sitting right across from the laptop.
Right.
Not that I think we had problems this time, but I know in the past that it sometimes was hard to hear people in your room versus our room and things like that.
Yeah.
So like a September meeting would be recap, so we can take everything we talked about today, engage in some reflective analysis of what we discussed, and then have a Zoom meeting. If we hadn't had this Zoom meeting, as a scenario, a hypothetical, we would talk about these issues that have emerged from our regional meetups. Is that?
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe even because we did this in August. So instead of Lori sharing her idea about the markers whiteboard thing, she could actually talk in September or early October about whether that worked or not. Right. She's like, I had this great idea from our in-person meeting that I then implemented for start of school.
Right.
And here's what I did, and here's how, and we got, all these calls. We asked people where they, why they called us, and it was, they had the marker. Right.
Right.
Marker. Oh yeah, so dry erase marker.
Dry erase markers.
Yeah.
We're going to try it. We actually have a meeting to discuss how to reach us in a classroom emergency. It's a huge problem for us. Not a huge, I shouldn't say it's a huge problem.
But it is a problem.
But it is a problem because you call the help desk and you get the kid that doesn't know anything about how to reach my classroom technicians, and faculty's waiting.
Right.
And we're sitting at our desks. Yeah.
Right.
My facilitator spider senses tingling just to make sure we end on time and release people. We said we were going to release them.
All right.
Kathy?
I had wondered if it was worth like once a year trying to get together as a bigger group, but rather than sort of the free format, maybe some of the best things that bubbled out of these smaller meetings actually have people talk about.
Sure.
This is something I did that people were interested in sharing a wider, that people could sort of nominate. I want to hear more about this.
And that TLT symposium at Ed Tech Day, that's this group. So we can define that how we want as far as the slots are there. So
it would be, I know I always felt when I got to go to Ed Tech Day that it was nice to have the lunch hour to talk with everybody who was there from this.
Right.
But again, it's just an hour. And I don't know if it means like not having a session for another, like stopping a half an hour before and keeping a half an hour after, so we have 2 hours to talk at Ed Tech Day as whoever's there as a bigger.
I like the idea of picking Ed Tech Day also as where we're going to try to get everybody together in person, because I'm going to go back and put it on my calendar so I make it a priority to go.
Right.
Good. And we can twist it a little bit away from technology maybe. So it says TLT, it's GL, little t.
Right. I mean, it's what 20 years ago it was technology was really separated from pedagogy, and now it's like where does my ankle leave and my calf start? I don't know. It's all part of my leg. So I think and we can certainly, the lunch I've already discussed with my CIO, so that's going to be in. So when we get down to the logistics, So we will be having a lunch on that tech day for our group. I don't know, like the other parts we can discuss on how we want to rearrange, if there's any rearranging, or I love the ideas. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for pulling this together today.
Marty, do you have a local copy of the notes from your site so we can pull them together and synthesize before I send them out?
I've got my notes.
Do you want to?
Which are legible only to me.
Should we put a Google Doc together and
We
like,
should.
share our stuff?
Yeah, we can
I
do
think
that.
Sounds good.
That sounds like homework.
Yeah, it does.
So what I'll do is I'll post the recording and share that out to the Clifton list along with the synthesis of the notes from the Cornell site. Geneseo site, I'll leave it to you to synthesize and reshare as you will.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. This was a great session. Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You do too.